Hello everyone. So blessed May. Today is May Day, or Lá Bealtaine, as it is here in Ireland. I have lots of personal activities and rituals and things planned for today on the smaller level, the more sort of domestic side of things, as I often do on May Day. But you can bet I will be making this year's flower crown and wearing it and doing it in May Day colors. And I will also keep the flower crown as I do each year. I will make sure that it dries properly, and then it will be hung up in this room somewhere, as previous Bealtaine crowns have been. There are a fair amount of new people to this channel, which was an overwhelming thing to experience. That's an influx of, although positive, albeit positive, that's an influx of a lot of new information. So I have taken some time off to kind of comprehend that. So what I think I'm going to do for this video is just introduce myself a little bit and then give you a brief sampling of the sort of thing that happens on this channel. So I'm called Saoirse here in the online sphere. I am an autistic woman. Pronouns are she, her, mostly. And I am late diagnosis individual. And I speak in a very, I try anyway, to speak in a very clear way on my channel, in a very structured way usually. I will often have notes with me and so on. The aim for this channel space is to cover topics to do with history, very most favorably or favoritely the Middle Ages, some aspects of the Renaissance, especially the Northern Renaissance in terms of aesthetics, and some aspects of the 19th century. I also like to cover what I call wicked stitchcraft, which is sewing magic. I make my own clothes the vast majority of the time. I cover topics surrounding art history, and when those things intersect with tarot, I cover tarot and oracle. I read tarot and oracle pretty much daily, if not multiple times per day, for various purposes within my personal practice. But this channel is not exclusively what you might call a tarot tube channel, just for, purposes of clarity. Most of my visual style of reading is art and art historically inclined, and I'm a very visual thinker. I'm not the most esoterically minded of individuals, although I think there's a lot of merit in that, and I have some ideas about that. My former professional training for 10 years was as an archivist and rare books librarian, particularly in art historical libraries and religious institutions. So a lot of how I approach aspects of material culture and history, and even the ways in which we transmit symbolism and the questions we ask of ourselves on a social level and how that interacts, or sometimes doesn't, with the primary resources that we have to hand, how that impacts our perception of ourselves and so on, is a very, very salient and ongoing topic in my life. And I come at it from a very sort of remaining evidence of material culture perspective. My aim is to slowly work myself out of autistic burnout and set up an Etsy shop selling art. So what you will be seeing on this channel for the most part is going to be showing some form of creative process, exploring the concepts that go into art, the concepts that exist in tarot, feeling inspired, and so on. And I am hoping to keep as much as what I produce as possible on the more informational side, but it is never coming from a perspective of expertise in any regard. I am not qualified as a teacher, and I don't, like, my master's degrees currently, my master's degree currently is in archives and rare book cataloging and things like that, library and information science. So that does not qualify me as an expert in any other topic. And I'm not an expert in that topic anyway either, and I'm certainly no longer a professional in that field. So this whole entire channel is very much a, if something interests you or inspires you, you are the one imbued with the agency to make it your own and or totally disagree with it. And that's part of the fun and the nuance of sharing ideas. Another piece of context is that I live in Ireland. I am not of Irish origin. I am an American by nationality still. So I'm an expat. And a lot of my experience is, a lot of my witchcraft in particular, is influenced by the Irish medieval literature tradition, so Irish myths. But a lot of my practical application features a mix of my experience in the US and abroad in Ireland. I don't feel that I will ever be fully assimilated. That's not necessarily even a goal that I have, because I don't think it's achievable, just from my personal perspective. So a lot of my witchcraft features a very sort of interesting amalgamation of, say, you know, I play various instruments and so on, so like I have experience in the past with traditional music and traditional dance and things like that I've talked about in other videos. So if, for example, something about my witchcraft practice is influenced by Appalachian music and my understanding of that, it will get amalgamated into how I heal the sort of divide between the two worlds, as it were. I am, you know, loosely speaking, if you want to use the word devotee, I am a devotee of the Morrigan. And I take a very primary resources approach to that. And I'm currently pursuing more information, more specifically, about medieval magic. And I'm hoping to kind of actually learn properly to translate Old Irish at some stage in my life. Lastly, I am also musically trained as a classical musician, so a lot of how I approach topics is in this intensely multimedia way, and I do like to blend all of these worlds as I tend to think of them. It's very much an aspect of, you know, unlived lives, you know, past disciplines, that kind of thing, and my witchcraft, in part, is aimed at amalgamating all those things into a more unified whole, after, you know, the events that have transpired in my life and the things that may or may not have gone the way I would have liked, and so on and so forth. So that's a basic introduction to me as far as I can think of right now. And now what I'm going to do is just show some of the things that I've been working on recently. I've been collecting footage over the last several weeks since the vernal equinox of some of the things I've been working on. So just briefly, I ran out of pages in my last Book of Illuminations, which is my journal / sacred book. So I made myself a new one because I couldn't find one to the specifications that I wanted. So this was just a sort of a dummy test, but I'm going to make the next one in the actual kinds of paper that I wanted. This is all made of materials I already had at home. Recycled brown paper. And made in such a way, you know, I like to do sketches and things as well. Made in such a way that it can open flat regardless of whatever page it is on, and hand sewn and hand bound and then hand covered and so on and so forth, all using supplies I already had at home, including the fact that I didn't have anything to kind of fold and score the paper with, so I used like a butter knife, you know, really sort of MacGyvering this together just to get a sense of what the bookbinding process feels like, again from a more experiential perspective rather than the library and information science. I know how quires, you know, work, and I know how collation signatures work, and I wanted the more physical side of it, so that's what I've recently done. I have also recently sewn myself a new corset. This one is currently, I'm currently actually redoing a part of it, because after a bit of wear, after the mock-up stage, I've realized some of the issues I have with it, so I'm currently working on adjusting those. This also was sewn and created only with materials I already had at home. As I said, I make most of my own clothes, and I am what you might call a history bounder. So I do wear a corset on the daily, and I wanted to just make sure that with recent body changes and things and changes in preferences, I wanted to make sure that I had a corset that fit me slightly better. And so I recently made this, but I didn't yet want to go buying more materials unless I wanted to make, you know, without making sure that something would fit me properly. And I had enough things lying around to sort of cobble together out of different relatively similar fabrics a new corset. So that's what I've done. I just now need to do some changes to the top shaping of it. Another thing that gets featured on this channel, in addition to my own personal art, of which you can see more on my website, that'll all be in the linked description, I also make my own ink, my own medieval ink, according to medieval recipes. This is just a tiny little jam pot that I use as a kind of a makeshift ink pot. But I make jars of, at the moment, just iron gall ink, although I am experimenting with a sap and wood based ink for a red color. And now I'm going to just show some hopefully calming and visually clear footage of a recent project I did where I did a redesign of my altar. I have done redesigns of my altar in the past. For example, these trees that are on either side of my altar are painted onto the wall, and I don't own this apartment, it is rented. But these trees are hand painted onto the wall, inspired loosely speaking by a Renaissance art historical material, including the Visconti Sforza tarot. And you can see that process in a video that I'll link in the cards and also in the description. But recently I did a redesign of the altar due to some of the changing symbolism and recent experiences and so on in my personal life. And just there underneath Yorick, the skull, there is now a statue platform that I found in a thrift/vintage antique shop, and it was just a baseline, rather musty and dirty old black wooden platform that I then took home and cleaned up, and I have painted, and I will show that footage on the screen. But I also have various bits and bobs that I've found, and here, for example, I found this set of rosary beads in the same antique shop. And they have the same kind of similar black residue that I suspect comes from layers of dust, but also incense smoke and a little bit of the tar from things from use in churches. And I'm using that very specifically, I'll see if it will focus, to, you can see the black specks on all of the beads, hopefully. I'm leaving that there for the express purpose of working that into my understanding of shadow work. I do work a little bit within a very sort of hellscape influenced set of medieval principles and ideas, so sometimes this sort of thing is exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, so without further ado, I'll just switch over to that kind of artsy footage that kind of covers some of the creative things I've done since the vernal equinox, and yeah, hopefully that footage will come out.
streets are cloaked with briar, where sings a feathered choir. Open the doors, unfold the shutters. The air. Open the doors, unfold the shutters. The air flutters.
Okay, so that's it. I want to thank you all for being here. I hope those of you who are interested in the kind of content I wish to create will stay. And those of you who are not interested are in no way obligated to stay. So here's to more witchy, winding, and weedy rambles under the auspice of the Morrigan and with art and art historical process in mind. And I hope everyone is doing well, taking care of themselves to the best of their ability, and being kind. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.